Yay! We have a polar bear! We have a polar bear! Hello, how is everyone? Today we're going to be starting with some Planet Zoo content. They have recently released the Arctic pack, so we're going to go and have a little play with that. I'm going to pick a sandbox zoo. As you can see, I've already had a little bit of a go. Wasn't happy with the results, so I decided to refilm. And as usual, I have no idea what to call my zoo. Let's try Tundra Zoo Take 3, because that's realistic. So today, I'm going to try and do a polar bear exhibit. So obviously we're starting with our Tundra Zoo, which makes things a little bit easier in terms of the habitat requirements for the animal. Yes, I know I need to keep a hut. I always need to keep a hut. If we go and have a look, so we've got the Arctic wolf in this pack, then you've got the Dall sheep, you have the, where is it, polar bear, and then you also have reindeer. Oh, they look so cute. Right, I'm going to start with the polar bear. I just think it'd be quite fun to start with a polar bear. They are very needy though, that's the only thing. They need a lot of land and a lot of water, and they need really strong fencing. Not too high, but it just needs to be really strong. Cool. Okay, so start of my polar bear exhibit. I keep calling them exhibits, they're not exhibits, they're habitats. Anyway, I will remember the right word at one point. At this point, I'm trying to create the lake for our Lakehouse to sit in, and then I also included a space to have an underwater viewing platform. And then I'm just using the new paths that have come with the DLC. So there's a new wooden path and an ice path, and I'm using that to connect the exhibit up to the front entrance and create the foundation for the build. In order to put in the guest shop, you actually have to delete a part of the path, because unfortunately the shops and amenities, etc., they don't like being placed on top of the paths, so you do have to clear space around them. The other thing that I find really, really helpful when I'm working with themes that I'm not familiar with, I like to pull up some of Frontier's example blueprints and use those as kind of inspiration as I'm working. One of the main advantages of doing it that way is that I find that it helps me save time. So if there's a specific construction piece that I want to use, I can just duplicate it from the template instead of spending ages searching through all the construction materials to find it. And actually, if there's a collection of items that they've done that I really like the way that that looks, I can just copy that and paste it onto my own building as well. And actually you see me do that with the front of this building a little bit later. Something else that's really useful in the construction toolkit with this game is actually the ability to really finely move the items. So if you want to access that while you're actually got the item selected, you can just hit the X button, and then that will pull up your sort of XYZ axis, and then if you press X again, it'll pull up the specific rotation. But you can also use those advanced movements when you're duplicating items. So one of the tools that I use quite a lot is that duplicate with advanced move, I think it's called. And that way it preserves the position of the items that you're duplicating and allows you to fine tune that movement. So when I'm duplicating this decorative part all around the wall, that's the tool I'm using to make sure that I get it absolutely, as close to being spot on as I can. So one of the things that I realised actually was that the door frame wasn't wide enough, so I decided to remove it and replace it with this arch. And then I used these curved beams to make it fit into the Norse style a bit better. I say Norse, it reminds me a lot of like Skyrim, or if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, the people of Rohan. And at this point I am adding in all the windows, adding in the lights, just helping the building come to life a little bit more. One of the things that I noticed was that the blueprints that Frontier have given us, the backs of the Arctic buildings can look a bit plain. So I decided to use some of the beams from the corners and just kind of spice up the back a little bit more. So one of the things that I realised is that instead of duplicating the front porch from the template, I'd actually just moved it straight from the template. So I'd accidentally not merged the two groups that I was working on, but it meant that I'd kind of got them interconnected and stuff. So the easiest way of dealing with that is just to delete the remainder of the template, and at this point I didn't need it anyway. And then the last thing to do to finish off the build was just to go and line the sides with this railing. So a lot of the example buildings in the Arctic style that Frontier have sent us have this railing, and I wanted to keep within that theme. Also, it helps prevent guests from falling in the lake, or really that's the reason I like to tell myself. If you watch the later clips, they just completely ignore the railing, the walls, and walk right through them. Yay for collision physics. Anyway, at this point I'm spending quite a lot of time just fine-tuning the position of the railing. One of the problems with the fencing in the game is that it doesn't really snap that well, and the size is slightly off, so working with it and getting a nice finish can be quite fiddly. But if you do get a nice finish, it is quite satisfying. And then the last little bit really is just decorating the inside. So I'm going and putting on a roof on the column where I put in the shop, adding beams to the edges, kind of making it feel like it belongs in this building. And then I'm going to go and put in some benches and some lighting and just give it a bit more atmosphere and a bit more utility for our guests. At this point, the next thing on my to-do list was to put in the underwater viewing area, and in my experience it's easier to put the paths in and then the glass. So you can see me kind of connecting up the paths at this point. And then because I sunk the underwater viewing level lower than the rest of the lake, I'm just kind of evening out the terrain. The glass barrier can be quite tricky to put in, it's quite fiddly. And actually trying to get it to integrate into the sides can be a bit of an issue, but just keep playing around with it. I'm sure you guys will be able to get it to work. And then at this point I'm also making sure that the bank by the lake house is nice and steep to stop the bears from escaping. No one likes runaway polar bears. They're too dangerous. The other thing I needed to do was make sure that I had a nice gentle slope on one side to let the bears get into the water, and then I'm just going and running a fence all around the exhibit, just to make sure that the bears can't escape. And then I decided that actually I wanted to put in a viewing area at the side where there's that really big sort of snowy run, just to give the guests somewhere else so they can go and have a look at these wonderful polar bears. And then I realised that I also needed to put in things like the keeper hut and the staff room, so I decided to put them at the furthest end of the exhibit, and I wanted to use the Arctic themed buildings obviously. And I figured they would look quite cool if I kind of arranged them to look a little bit like a town, and then I wanted to integrate them into the exhibit a little bit, so I actually put a couple buildings inside the exhibit and a couple on the outside. Okay, so it's time to get our polar bears, pop them in the quarantine for a little bit and make sure they're all alright. And thanks to the power of fast forwarding magic, they're ready to be released. So watch them run on through. Are they going to run or are they going to walk? Oh no, they run! Yeah, you release those polar bears. Yay! We have a polar bear! We have a polar bear! Doesn't know what he's doing with himself. High amounts of litter. Oh, already? Right, let's sort this litter out, shall we? So that's negative impact on the guests. And we got some litter here. Great. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a caretaker. You, my friend, are on litter duty. Have fun. So yeah, one of the quite cool things when you have your staff, you can actually specify which tasks you want them to do, and that helps them to focus and prioritise their workloads. Is there anything else I can really put in this exhibit? Not really. Like, it's a little bit annoying, like how sparse and how empty it is. But there's not a lot I can do about it. The other thing I need to check is whether or not my polar bears are going to escape. So let's have a look. Can you get out? No, you can't get out. Haha. Cool. So because we've made the banks here really steep, they can't climb out, which means the guests can get nice and close and not have any problems. But it is important to have like this like overhang here, so you can see that the fence actually extends past where the bears can reach. Some animals can jump, others can climb. It can be quite problematic, but it's all good. So it's just the enrichment that I need to do. Let's go habitat, and it's quite nice actually with this. So they released an update and the new DLC at the same time, pretty much. So they've added in. So they've reskinned basically the cardboard box, so we now have the gift box as well, which is, you know, I quite like that. Let's put in some fun stuff, shall we? So you got large snowballs. I think that's just a reskin of the large ball, if I'm honest, but I still like it. I think it's fun. So one cool thing that we actually, well, not one cool thing, one of the cool things that we've had with the new DLC, so we now have ice rocks and snow rocks, which I really like. The only problem is that you... Where is it? There we go, so it's under the tundra. So you got snow rocks. The tundra rocks we had before, and then you got ice and snow. The only problem that I've come across, like when you're working with, especially like the snow rock, even in the tundra zoo, you can lose all of your snow, and then it looks really weird. Because you just have this pile of snow and no other snow around. So I'm going to stick at this point with these ones, because the snow is going to, yeah, so it's going to cover it like that. So one of the things that I realised is that initially when I put the bears into the habitat, the space underneath the path was being counted as the kind of hard shelter requirement, and then the game realised that the bears couldn't shelter in water. So at this point I decided to build them a rock cave, and to make it look better from the lake house, because you can't see the entrance from the lake house, I decided to integrate a waterfall. And when I'm doing this kind of like integrated cave rock house, I find it easier to actually have the waterfall coming from underneath the rock, as opposed to having to try and look like there's water on top of the cave where the bears are resting. So you can see me going and fitting that underneath the shelf, and it looks... I quite like the way that looks, because I feel like it pays homage to the fact that this is supposed to be a man-made zoo, but they're trying to go for a bit more of a naturalistic look. So yeah, I quite like it. And then because I decided to make the waterfall wider, it's really difficult to find those little nubbins that control where the special effects are. So actually it's easier to use the precise movement tool, lift up the rock, move things around, and then put the rock back down. And then here I'm just trying to sort out all the rubbish in the litter again, because, you know, guests be guests. Anyway, I think it is time for our showcase. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed my first gaming video. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. I want to get better at this. I want to do this more. Subscribe, ring the bell, like, do all that jazz. And yeah, see you guys next time. Cheerio!